The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Hello, and welcome to the Oracle of Luna with Bridget Engels podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, Mael Brigde. She is the author of a Bridget of Ireland devotional, Sung Amongst the Stars, and a devotee of the Goddess Brigit. Welcome, Mael.
Hi, good to be here.
Excellent. How are you today?
I'm really well. It's a beautiful day and my squirrel visited. All is well.
Oh, excellent. It's a bright sunny day here in Las Vegas, and it looks like the wheel has turned towards spring. So it's been a lovely Imbolc, and as you know, you are a devotee of Goddess Brigit, and she actually inspires me quite a bit. But this podcast is about you and your journey. So let's get started.
Okay.
So Mael, how did your interest in Goddess Brigit come about?
Well, I was a pretty passionately Catholic child. I really enjoyed saints and nuns and getting communion, singing in the choir, all of the fun parts for me of Catholicism. I really was into. But when I was a young teen and learning more about the world and feminism and whatnot, I began to understand that there were some things in the church that I really wasn't happy with. The key for me, which led me to leave Catholicism when I was 13, was the ban on abortion and the idea that if you had an abortion, you were sinning. Like, so if somebody raped you and you didn't want to have their child and you had an abortion, you were the sinner. Of course, obviously he was the sinner too, but I just thought that was wrong. So that was it for me. But then over the next few years, I found that there was a real lack in my life when it came to celebrations, like what replaces Christmas, what replaces Easter, what replaces masses on Sunday, and what do you do when in a Catholic existence you would pray to God? How do you deal with those kinds of crises or celebrations in people's lives, births, deaths, all of those things? What do you do if you don't have a religion? So I started looking around, and I began hearing about goddesses, and so I was drawn to that. This was in the 70s.
In Canada, we're talking.
Yeah, in Canada. Yeah, I was born in Manitoba, in Winnipeg, and then when I was 10, we moved to Vancouver. So at this point, I was in Vancouver.
Yeah. Did you find yourself drawn to New Age bookstores?
Well, there was no such thing then. There was, I don't even think there was a women's bookstore. There might have been a women's bookstore at that point, but there was no publishing industry for pagans or New Age folk as we know them today. The feminist presses, of which there were a very few, were putting out some books about goddesses. And so I was volunteering at the women's bookstore in Vancouver. So I got to see some of them. And that was my first road in. And for a long time, I was just exploring European goddesses, Middle Eastern goddesses, but I didn't yet know about Brigit. So it was a long and winding road, but after a while, even though I was quite fond of some of the goddesses I was learning about, I wanted someone I would have a more heart connection with, someone whose ancestry was like my ancestry, so that I just had more of an understanding of where they were coming from, because I really didn't know anything about the cultures of the goddesses that I was learning about. So when I stumbled across Brigit, who was Irish, and I always identified with the Irish side of my ancestry, I was sold. Although there was not much about her. Like, I found one paragraph, no, it was probably a couple of paragraphs about her in a very large book that a friend of mine gave to me. He said, "You've got to have this book." It was all about goddesses. And
do you remember the name of that book?
Yeah, it was Barbara Walker, The Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets. And I won't vouch for her scholarship in all ways. Like, she was covering a lot of different goddesses and spirits and whatnot. And anyway, a lot of what she said was not quite accurate, but it got me started on the road. And then I went to the library, and I was able to find one chapter about Saint Brigit in Lady Gregory's book on the saints, I guess. And then by some miracle, there was a whole book on Saint Brigit at the library as well, which was Alice Curtain's book that came out in the 50s. She was an Irish writer, and I reread that book. It's just called Saint Brigit of Ireland, I think, but I reread it a couple of years ago, and I still think it's a great book.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but that was all I had for a very long time.
Yeah. So who maybe has influenced you the most on your journey?
Well, there have been a handful of people. I would say my sister Annie. Without her, I might never have really taken this path. I might have seen the things, but thought, no, they're not for me. But because she was so interested in history and feminism, she was the one I went to talk to the priest about abortion with. And she's even the one who got me interested in Buddhism and following the teacher that I follow in Buddhism. So my sister Annie, who is 3 years older than me, or maybe only a year and a half, but anyway, somewhere in there, she has had a profound effect on me. She also has been a daughter of the flame for most of its existence as well. So I've felt her inspiration and her support in many ways.
And I assume you went to college in Vancouver?
I did not go to college. Well, I did for a couple of years, but I left home when I was 13. I ran away when I was 13. And so that was the end of school for several years. And eventually I went back as adult retraining. So I didn't go back to a high school, but I took some courses, and then I started in at a college here. But unfortunately, that didn't last either. So I guess I did go to college, but I wasn't able to stay in college because I was physically unwell. However, I did have a couple of years of learning that I really, really loved, and that has had a real impact on how I see the world since then.
Yeah. So have you been to Ireland? I assume you've been to Kildare.
Yeah, it took quite a few years before I was able to get there. I think it was 97 when I went. And of course, that was before Solus Regia had their, what do you call it? Place where people come and stay, retreat center. They just had their little house. So I had gotten in touch with them ahead of time and rather brazenly asked if I could come and stay with them. I had very little money, like practically no money. And so I couldn't do much if it cost anything. So they were very kind and they said I could come and stay with them. And I just loved them. They were so lovely. It was Sister Phil and Sister Mary. And they let me just go through all of their files on Brigit, and they let me come to their prayer moments. And I was just going to sit there quietly, but I did sit there quietly, but I wasn't going to intrude my own paganism into their Catholicism. But when Sister Phil was leading the prayer, she made I can't remember what her words were now, but she made a gesture towards my presence and my devotion to Brigit rather than God. I was knocked backwards. I was so surprised that a Catholic nun would feel okay doing that, And Sister Mary and I had a conversation at another time, and she said, "Well, I don't think you should call yourself a pagan, though." And I was like, "But pagan's not a bad word." And we talked about it, and she was really open. They were both so open, and I've always hoped that I could get back there one day. I would really love to see them again.
And did you go in to see the eternal flame or the sacred flame of Brigid?
Do you mean in the fire temple?
Yeah. Is that?
Unfortunately, it wasn't available. I couldn't get into the cathedral or see the fire temple. I think they were doing renovations or something, so I couldn't get in there. Sister Mary and Phil had a candle in their sanctuary room that they kept burning all the time. And they had a little, they'd done their backyard so that you could do a walking meditation in it and just be with, it was very simple, but just be with your prayers and Brigit. And also they took, I think, it was Mary. She took me to the 2 Brigit's wells around there. So it was,
you could really immerse yourself in her presence.
Yes, and when I was at her, she also took me to see a stone carving of Saint Brigit, but she left me at the well that you normally see when you see photographs, right? So I was just going to walk back later, and so I was able to spend a good couple of hours there. And when I was there, I was just talking with Brigid and talking about some things that I was really wrestling over in terms of the direction of my life. And I wouldn't say I had a vision or anything like that, but just in talking with her that day, I understood for the first time that there was no conflict in the various courses that my passion went into, and that they all actually work together. So it was a really affirming and kind of a life-changing time, just those couple of days that I was in Kildare.
Yeah. And you mentioned that this was, okay, so you were growing up in the 70s. There was a lot of, events happening here in the US, of course, movements, the feminist movement, and, just all the students in Vietnam, out there, with their protests. And there was just so much going on in this late 60s and throughout the 70s. Do you think that influenced you as well up in Canada? I'm sure it was.
Oh, absolutely. And you've got to remember that a lot of draft dodgers came up to Canada, and Canada let them stay. So, the question was in our ears a lot, for sure. And, the hippies. And I remember I ran away when I was 13. So when I was hitchhiking around BC and Alberta, I connected with a lot of people who considered themselves hippies, and that was so it was all there, the conversations and the
I'm always fascinated with the source points of history and with what's going on in society and how it influences spirituality. And so that's why I was asking.
Well, my parents, I came from, I still do come from a working class background, and my parents had pretty left-leaning views. And so I already had those belief systems in place before the draft dodgers, before the people of the US had to confront whether or not to go to war.
Right.
So it kind of built on what was already there.
It's so interesting. So actually that kind of leads me to my next question is, after you were in Ireland and after you immersed and started your journey with Goddess Brigit, what was the next step in your journey? Did you start to write poetry? Did you start writing, or were you kind of soul searching?
Actually, before I even went there, I started writing. I don't suppose you've ever heard of, God, can I even remember what they're called? There's fanzines that were a big thing, but then there was the APAs, Amateur Press Associations, and I joined a thing called a women's APA. So everybody would write their own fanzine, and then they would be sent in to someone who would collate them together and then send them out to all the other members, and we'd read each other's fanzines and comments. And it was like an early social media, right? So we would be commenting on each other's writings and lives and everything. And
that's really cool. It's like a writer's community. That's awesome.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. And the ones that I knew were science fiction fans, but one of the women in the APA that I joined said to me, "Oh, you should go over to a pagan APA over here." And I was like, "Oh my God, there's an APA for pagans." Because she said that because I had written, my whole zine was about Brigid, right? I hadn't been to Ireland yet, but I was already completely besotted. So everything I knew about her, I wrote into this zine. On one page was about the goddess, and on the other side was about the saint. So and that was where I met Erin Rowan Laurie, who is another person who has been a real inspiration and a support to me in my path with Brigit. She really, when I started Daughters of the Flame, she joined right away, but she also told other people about it. So other people joined because I wasn't plugged in to the pagan community the way she was. And what she would learn, the research she would do around Brigit, she would share with me, and it would shape my understanding of her too. So
she's a big influence on you.
Great influence. So Pagan Appa was a great stepping stone for me.
Okay, so so when did you begin writing your wonderful book, A Brigid of Ireland devotional Sung Among the Stars. How did that come about?
Well, I had always written prayers or rituals because, of course, I didn't have any. When I was a Catholic, I did. But now that I was a pagan, I didn't have any. And I would have to write them myself. And I know I wished that I had a book like this, so that I could just open up and find inspiration.
Yeah.
But what actually started me writing it more than just those few in the beginning was that I found out that I had cancer, and I got very frightened and wrote some very desperate poems, prayers, I guess, to Brigit. And then I had the surgery and started on my healing journey, which, of course, I'm still on years later. I don't have cancer anymore, but when does healing ever end?
It's lifelong.
Exactly. But in the couple of years following my cancer, I just wrote hundreds of poems to her and about her. And the more that I read about her, the more things I thought about and wanted to write about. And so I was constantly being inspired to learn more about her and to look at it through the lens of my own life, or, just when I learn something about her, I learn it best if I write about it, because then I look at it more carefully than I can when I'm just reading.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Brigid is a goddess of healing, so I could see where you would want to invoke her and connect with her during your cancer years. And definitely, she probably did heal you, from what I can hear, and it seems like she probably had a big influence on your healing.
Yeah.
So what does Brigid represent to you? Like, what does she symbolize to you?
Well, there are many symbols that are attached to her that I can use in understanding my own life and the world around me. But what she is to me, I was sort of thinking about this, and she's a whole lot of different things. She's, first of all, I think, a friend. She's somebody I tell things to, and when I'm having a hard time, I talk with her, and like you say, she's a healer for sure. She's been a big healer in my life, and also somebody I turn to for other people who want to have healing work or prayers. So in her healing capacity, I turn to her a lot. But also, like that conversation I had with her at the well, knowing her, she's helped to reshape my life in a lot of ways. And she's a role model. Like, I really enjoy reading her saints' lives, especially Cogitosus. And a lot of the different stories about her give me a sense of who this person was, not the goddess, but the saint, who she was. And she was somebody who I would really like to have in my camp, so she's a role model to me of how to be a support to other people, and also to be to have boundaries, really clear boundaries, and to get what you need to get, do what you need to do in your life, and not let the pressures of the world around you force you in a direction that is wrong for you.
Right.
She and in that, she's kind of a guide too, because I talk to her, help, and she helps me through. a part of me, I notice I sometimes just call her mother, and I mean, she's not a mother goddess. I mean, as a goddess, she has 1 or 3 children, but she's not a mother goddess. But still, I feel mothered by her, both in the comforting sense and in the sense of helping me to keep my wits about me and do what I need to do better, to not give up. Yeah. And she's a connection to my ancestors, to the other world, to my own imagination and inspiration. So I guess really she's kind of my Anam Cara, my soul friend. I can tell her anything and she's there.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I am devoted to the Goddess Brigit as well as Morrigan, but I see personally Brigit as somebody who lights my path, and I always call on her when I'm lost or in the dark or feeling low, and she surrounds me with her sacred flames. But it is sometimes her truth can be not that easy.
Yeah.
But she has many faces, and I was reading, I think it was Confessions of a Pagan Nun, and a fabulous book. And I can't remember the author, but it was such a beautiful little book. But it is the story about Brigid as a pagan slave. And I believe she follows a druid for a while and learns from him, and then she begins her I guess she becomes a leader and a healer, and eventually an abbess. But it's a wonderful book. But there are many books about Brigid and her many faces. But it's fascinating to me.
That book, I read it when it first came out, and
you did? Okay.
And I took it with me to Haiti when I was living in Haiti for a while, and I told the sister that I was working with there about the book, and she wanted to read it, so I gave it to her. And she's a Catholic nun, so she read it, she loved it, she lent it to another, and so a whole bunch of Catholic nuns have also read that book and really enjoyed it.
Wow, that's good. I mean, it's a beautiful story, but it sheds a light to me, or did shed a light to me on Brigid, the saint. And I grew up Catholic as well, and the teachings about Goddess or the Saint Brigid were there for me, but it was an eye-opener for sure. Learning that she was a pagan healer and leader, and uniter of tribes. So that was fascinating.
Yeah, but that is fiction. I mean, all of that part is somebody's imagination. We don't have any evidence of any of that, right?
Yeah. So, I know. Back then, it wasn't written history. The history was written by the church, the monks, right?
Yeah. Well, there are reasons why. I believed for a long time that the nun was previously a pagan and tended a perpetual fire to the goddess Brigit, but a lot of things have come along that have made me realize that it is probably not true. And actually, it was Erin who first pointed this out to me. And they don't come more pagan than her, but she just pointed out the evidence that there. For one thing, there was a lot of things written about Brigid over hundreds of years, but a perpetual flame was not mentioned until 1185, and she was born in the 5th century. So she was born around 450 or something. So that's a lot of hundreds of years to go by, and a lot of things written for that never to have been mentioned. Even when Cormac wrote in Cormac's glossary, that entry about the goddess Brigit that is so famous, where he talks about the poet, the patron of poets, the patron of, or matron, I would say, but anyway, patron of smithcraft and the patron of healing. He doesn't mention fire in there anyway at all. So we can find fire in her stories, but as for there being a historical fire, I don't think there was one. And at the time that not before the 12th century, at the time that her nuns were tending it, there were also at least 7 other monasteries, I think it was, in Ireland that had a perpetual fire, and they were all tended by men. But they were all also kind of a late thing. So I think it was just a Christian thing that happened at that point in history.
Interesting.
But because of Victorian writers who had their imaginations of how this might have come about without actually having any of the evidence, they decided that must have been what happened. But so now we're kind of unpicking a lot of lot of wrong perceptions that they have peppered into. But I mean, it's fine to see her that way, or to believe it, or whatever. It's just, I no longer believe it, and there are a lot of people who no longer believe it. But
well, I was under the impression, or somewhere I heard that the temple, or the monastery, or the place where the perpetual flame is lit, was directly on top of an ancient pagan fire temple.
Well, but that's somebody's imagining. There's never actually been an archaeological dig there.
Oh, okay.
So we don't know. I would love it if they would do a dig, and then if they found something like that, we could go, yes. But this thing that we call a fire temple, there's no proof that it actually is a fire temple. It's a structure, and that's what we call it. But I wish they would do more digging around there.
So what is Daughters of the Flame, and how did that come about, and what does it mean to be a daughter of the flame now?
Well, it came about because I was so cheesed off by the idea that this wonderful practice of tending the flame had begun and then was extinguished, because it was actually extinguished twice. Once by an Irish bishop, I think. Well, it doesn't matter who. It was because of the sort of more Romanized church. They just cut that part out.
Yeah.
I'm getting myself all mixed up. I will tell you. Okay. It was extinguished twice, mostly to do with the suppression of the Catholic monasteries when England became a Protestant place, right? And so at that point, I was still thinking of it as an ancient pagan practice, and also a women's practice. And even if it hadn't been ancient and pagan, it really annoyed me that these priests came in and said, "Sorry, women, you're not allowed to do this anymore." I thought that it was a really beautiful practice, and I wanted to bring it back into the world. And I also wanted to bring Brigit, a living tradition of honoring Brigit. I wanted to bring that back into the world. Now, there were a couple of things I didn't know at that time. One was that the Lady Olivia's group, the Fellowship of Isis, they had started a hearth, which is like a subgroup that was dedicated to Brigit before.
In England?
Or wasn't she in Ireland? I think she was in Ireland, but either way. But that was a small group that was going that, like the Daughters of the Flame, for a long time, nobody knew about except those who were in the Fellowship of Isis. But also on the day that I lit Bridget's flame with the Daughters of the Flame for the first time, the sisters, the Brigidine sisters in Ireland, relit it for the first time and began tending it. So we had this pagan and Catholic relighting of her flame on the same day, which is pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
So I wasn't actually the first one to light her flame again in this, the last millennium, but that was my intention. And so we just take turns tending her flame.
Okay, so is Daughters of the Flame a group, an online group?
Well, it started before there was such a thing as online, right? And then we did it by letters, and so we don't physically get together. Although when I have an opportunity, I like to meet members. But no, we all do it from our own little sanctuaries wherever they are.
Okay, now I get it. So if somebody were interested in becoming a Daughter of the Flame here in 2022, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they could contact me through my website or through Facebook or Twitter or Instagram.
Yeah. Okay.
At the moment, we don't have, we'd have to talk.
Yeah, they would contact you.
We would have to talk. Yeah.
Okay. And then you also teach different online classes about Goddess Brigit?
Yeah. I have an introduction called Discovering Brigit, and that's followed by an activation course called Stepping into Brigit. And then I have an independent course called Journey with Brigit, Goddess of Poetry. And that's about both reading and writing poetry, but also about learning about the poet in Ireland in ancient times and through Brigit and modern. And so it's quite an intensive little course. And a lot of the people who take it they don't consider themselves poets, but it's just an opportunity to immerse yourself in that part of Brigit and that part of yourself.
Okay, so it's through poetry and creativity and inspiration, kind of bringing you closer to Brigit.
Yeah.
I often, and I think about the smithcraft aspect of Goddess Brigit, and I actually see it more as her transformation, the way she transforms and forges fire and metal. Do you have any thoughts on the smithcraft aspect of her?
That is mostly how I have approached it, because I'm not personally able to do smithcraft. My body wouldn't be able to handle it.
Most people don't do smithcraft, but I was just curious. The concept of smithcraft, I kind of struggled with that for a while, but I don't know.
Well, blacksmiths or smiths generally have been in ancient Ireland. Smiths had a lot of magic attached to them, sort of in a similar way to poets and healers. So they're all sort of sacred crafts, I would call them, and you can be a devotee of any of those Brigits, the patron of smiths. For one, you can be her devotee and shape with metal as a smith, like a what do you call it, a whitesmith or a blacksmith. And there are people who do that, and they do some amazing work. It doesn't have to be beautiful, although it often is, but it's it's a kind of a connection that's really incredible, and transforming a hard lump of rock into something that you can use in ritual or for so many different ways is an enormous act of transformation.
Oh yeah, a sacred act.
And even into recent times, smiths in Ireland have been known to have magic attached to them, so they have been really important members of the community. And for me, because my bones won't let me bang things around like that, I just look at it in a metaphorical way, how I am transformed.
Yes. All right, well, we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask you, what are some of your upcoming plans for the future? Do you have maybe a new book or event or workshop, something that you want to bring up?
I am, just a second, I have to take a little sip of water. Okay. I don't have a book planned at the moment. I will continue with my 2 blogs. I have a general interest Brigit blog, so anything I come across to do with Brigit, I put it in there and release it out onto the world. But I also have one that is all Brigit poetry, and I will continue to work on those. The Stone on the Belly, the poetry blog, is not just my poetry. It's some traditional and lots of modern poetry as well.
Okay.
And I will continue to do events, and 2 of them that I will probably be doing are the Cosmogenetrix Conference through the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple, and that's on the 19th of March. And hopefully I will also be at the Wise Woman Witchery Conference in the spring, but she doesn't have a date yet, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
And I've been kind of thinking I might do some live bits to my online classes. But all of these things, if you go to my blog, you can sign up for the newsletter, and anything that's going to be coming out, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Except for the blogs. You can just follow the blogs.
Okay. So you recommend people go to your website or your blog for future workshops and plans and events?
Yeah, the newsletter will tell you through the website. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And of course, you have a strong presence on Facebook and as well as Instagram, so people can find you there. So that is awesome. And I have really enjoyed speaking with you, Mael. I've learned a lot, and you have such a wonderful journey and background on the Goddess Brigit. So thank you so much for being here today with me.
You're really welcome. I was very happy when you got in touch with me, and I've enjoyed talking to you today.
Yeah. So would you like to offer up a short poem, a flame offering poem?
I would. This is one that I have in my, every email that I send out has this in it, and it's one of the ways that I use Brigit as a guide. So it's called Flame Offering. In the name of the 3 Brigits, I light the candle of my heart. May I offer it to everyone, gentle and steady, warm and bright.
Blessed be. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yes, may you continue walking with the Goddess Brigit, and blessed be.
Thanks, Bridget. See you again.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody.